think you know classic trucks? The 1974 Kenworth W900a is a legend, but its true story is full of secrets. It was a movie star before it was famous, a Frankenstein of rival parts, a cuspier chameleon with an identity crisis. This isn't just history, it's the untold story. Strap in. 1. For anyone restoring or chasing down the history of a 1974 Kenworth W900a, be prepared for a unique kind of identity crisis. This model year sits right on the precipice of a major change, a cusp where the classic A model lineage began to blur with its successor. It was a time of transition on the factory floor, where parts bins were slowly changing over, leading to a quirky reality that still baffles enthusiasts today. The confusion stems from the fact that some trucks built late in the 1974 model year actually rolled off the assembly line wearing the defining features of the next generation, the W900b. Most notably, that would be the new, vertically stacked headlight grille flanked by those iconic marker lights, often called chicken lights. So, you might find a truck legally titled and been identified as a 1974, but to the naked eye, it looks for all the world like a 1975 model. This mix of parts wasn't just limited to the grille. It could extend to interior components, electrical systems, and other subtle details, creating a hybrid that belongs to neither era completely. This makes the life of a pure restorer a particular kind of nightmare. The quest for absolute year-correct authenticity becomes a deep dive into build sheets, date codes, and often conflicting historical records. It means that two genuine 1974 W900s parked side by side might look significantly different, one wearing the solemn, straightforward face of the classic A, and the other smiling with the bright, lit-up grille of the B. It's a fascinating, if frustrating, footnote that marks these trucks as the last of their kind, quietly absorbing the DNA of the future before the model name officially changed. 2. That famous aluminum cab, a hallmark of Kenworth's dedication to saving weight, tells only part of the story. For the man who ordered a 1974 W900a to tackle the brutal demands of the logging roads or the chaotic oil fields, pure lightweight philosophy had to meet unyielding reality. Kenworth knew this, and so they offer a rugged exception, an optional steel frame section installed behind that sleek aluminum cab. This created a fascinating and somewhat weird hybrid machine, a truck of two distinct personalities. From the windshield forward, it was all about efficient, corrosion-resistant finesse. But from the cab doors back, it was about sheer, brute force endurance. The steel frame rails could better withstand the incredible twisting forces and punishing impacts of off-highway work, where a loaded trailer might heave and slam against the chassis in ways highway haulers never experienced. So, spotting one of these 1974 hybrids requires a keen eye, looking past the iconic cab to the frame rails themselves. It represents a perfect snapshot of a builder listening to its customers, creating a pragmatic machine that was both a weight-conscious hauler and a reinforced workhorse, all depending on which segment of its anatomy you happen to be examining. 3. That square oil filler cap, a small and stubborn piece of engineering, was a daily tactile reminder of the era's no-nonsense practicality. For a driver checking fluids on a cold morning, it wasn't a simple twist-off affair. It required that specific, funnel-spouted oil can, a dedicated tool that lived in a side box, forever smelling of 40 weight. This was designed to prioritize function and a secure seal over convenience, a small fortress against leaks and dirt on the long haul. The quirk exists as a kind of mechanical timestamp. It speaks to a period before standardization and generic parts bins took over, when each manufacturer had their own methods, and even model years could have their own signature details. For the pure restorer today, finding a correct, period spout can be a hunt, and spotting that unmistakable square opening on a valve cover is a moment of quiet triumph. It's an unbroken thread back to 1974, authenticating a truck in a way a serial number alone cannot. In the grand scheme of a towering Kenworth, it's a minute detail, but it's precisely these kinds of details that give old machines their soul. It's a fossilized piece of daily ritual, a tiny, square portal into the hands-on, grease under the fingernails reality of trucking in the 70s, forever resisting the turn of a round cap. For, if you stood in a Kenworth dealer's lot in 1974, engine choice was more than a matter of horsepower. It was a statement of faith. Ordering your new W900A with the fledgling Caterpillar 3406 was a bold step into the unknown. While it promised modern efficiency and a new kind of low-end torque, it lacked the mountainous million-mile reputation of the iconic Detroit diesel 8V71. That Detroit was the soundtrack of the highways, a howling two-stroke symphony of mechanical certainty that every mechanic knew inside and out. Choosing the 3406 meant betting on a promise, not a legacy. For a driver, this decision played out in very real terms. The 8V71 was familiar. Its quirks and remedies were well-worn knowledge in every truck stop from coast to coast. The new Cat engine, with its advanced aftercooling and different character, was a relative stranger under the hood. Early adopters were part mechanic, part test pilot, learning its personality and needs on the road. There was a palpable tension between the proven, screaming Detroit and sophisticated, but unproven brute that was a 3406. Looking back, that 1974 order sheet now reads like a historic fork in the road. The driver who checked the box for the 3406 wasn't just specifying an engine. He was unwittingly placing an early bet on a legend in its infancy. That engine would go on to define heavy-haul reliability for decades, but in that moment, it was simply a new and intriguing option, humming with potential, yet still writing its very first chapters of reputation on the open road. 5. Choosing an air starter on your new 1974 W900A was an acceptance of a quiet little gamble every single morning. In an era defined by the grinding, protesting whir of electric starters, engaging an air starter was a moment of surreal silence. With a solid thunk of the valve and then just a massive, concentrated whoosh, the engine would simply begin to turn over, as if startled by a ghost. It was a bizarre and almost elegant spectacle, replacing raucous mechanical complaint with the sound of pure, pressurized force. This system earned fierce loyalty from drivers in the brutal cold of northern winters. Unlike electrical systems that could be drained by a weak battery in sub-zero temperatures, the air starter drew from the same tanks that powered the brakes. If you had air pressure, you had a start. It was a reliable sigh of relief on a frozen morning when other trucks sat silent. But that very dependency was also its terrifying flaw. The system demanded constant vigilance, as a significant air leak or a neglected compressor could bleed the tanks dry. The nightmare scenario was a silent starter and dwindling air gauges, a situation that could leave you stranded without the means to even crank the engine, a profound vulnerability the electric starter crowd never faced. So it represented a very specific kind of trust. You traded the familiar, battery-dependent roar for a quiet, freezing morning certainty that lived alongside a quiet, looming dread. It was a piece of brilliant, simple engineering that placed all its faith in the integrity of your air system, making every long downhill run a chance to build up not just speed, but the potential for that next silent start. 6. That iconic, rounded Aerodyne sleeper box, glimmering behind a cab, always appeared as a seamless extension to Kenworth's aluminum construction. It was a symbol of streamlined, lightweight efficiency rolling down the highway. Yet for many owners, there was a hidden truth beneath that paint. The roof cap of that sleeper was often not aluminum at all, but a carefully molded piece of fiberglass, a secret that quietly improved the truck's nature. This material choice was a stroke of pragmatic genius. Fiberglass was notably lighter than an equivalent aluminum roof, subtly lowering the rig's center of gravity for better handling without sacrificing precious headroom inside. More importantly, it was immune to the corrosive dance of water and metal, forever ending the worry of roof rot or the spread of white corrosion that could plague all aluminum structures. It was a maintenance when hidden in plain sight, a decision that prioritized long-term integrity over pure brand tradition. So, while drivers rested under that roof, they were sheltered by a clever fusion of old and new school building. The classic, polished aluminum walls meeting a modern composite overhead. It's a perfect, almost hidden metaphor for the truck itself. Outwardly traditional, but intelligently adapting with new ideas. Many drivers went decades without ever knowing. The fiberglass doing its job so perfectly that it never asked for attention. Its presence only revealed perhaps to a restorer's discerning eye or a sharp tap that sounded different from the ring of aluminum. 7. It was a heart-stopping moment, unique to an era of pure mechanical control. 1 second. You were watching the road over that long, beautiful slope of polished fiberglass or aluminum. The next, a terrible wind would catch the leading edge, and the entire mass of the hood, hundreds of pounds of it, would explode upward in a violent blur. The world ahead would vanish, replaced by the underside of the hood crashing against the windshield with a thunderous bang, often spider-webbing the glass, and leaving you blind at highway speed. Guided only by the white line under your driver's side window. The flaw was as simple as it was terrifying. That Majestic had relied on a manually set latch, a purely physical hook that demanded perfect engagement in the rush of a pre-trip check, or after battling a sticky mechanism with greasy hands. It was frighteningly easy for it to rest just shy of fully secure. At 55 miles per hour, the hood transformed into a crude airfoil, and lift would do the rest. It was a brutal lesson in physics that every driver of the era either experienced or feared, a visceral reminder that the very thing that gave the truck its character could also turn on you in an instant. This notorious flaw forged a specific kind of driver's ritual, a hard yank on the hood to test its seat, a double-checking mirror at the first hint of a wobble. It was a problem so acknowledged and dangerous that it directly fueled engineering changes. The subsequent redesigns of latches and the eventual addition of safety cables weren't about mere improvement. They were a direct and necessary response to this all-too-common moment of panic, a hard-won lesson in containing the beast within the beauty. 8. Beneath the fierce loyalty of the badges, where drivers would argue into the night over the superior grace of a Kenworth versus the raw stance of a Peterbilt, there lay a quiet, pragmatic secret on the assembly line. In 1974, for all their marketed rivalry, both marques answered to the same parent company, PACCAR. And when the supply chain tightened or a parts bin ran low, factory workers did what made sense. They reached across the aisle. This meant that a brand new, supposedly purebred Kenworth W900a could roll out of the plant wearing a subtle constellation of Peterbilt DNA. The click of a turn signal switch, the sweep of a gauge needle behind glass, or the very feel of a door handle pulled to enter the cab. Any of these could be a part born for a Peterbilt 359. It was a hidden kinship forced by logistics, a fact that would cause mild indignation for a proud owner who just spent hours extolling his truck's unique virtues at the diner counter. For mechanics, however, this was just street-level reality. It turned the rivalry into a quiet joke in the shop, where troubleshooting a quirky electrical gremlin in a Kenworth might lead to the realization that the solution lived in a Peterbilt parts manual. This parts bin democracy didn't diminish the trucks, instead revealed the unglamorous, practical truth of building complex machines. The soul of the truck was in its design and its driver, but some of its very touch points were born of simple availability, weaving a silent thread of commonality between the two kings of the road. 9. To see a W900a with its iconic long nose dramatically truncated is a moment of cognitive dissonance, like meeting a legendary athlete who's been somehow compacted. The sheer presence of the truck was fundamentally altered. The majestic, predatory silhouette was traded for a practical, almost blunt profile. These rare, short BBC configurations were a direct concession to the strict overall length laws of the era, a way to maximize trailer space, while still offering the W900's commanding cab and build quality. They were built for a specific, numbers-driven purpose, where every inch of legal length was money in the fleet owner's pocket. For the drivers assigned them, it was a mixed bag. They still had the same quality Kenworth cab under them, the same sense of command, but the soul of the experience was different. The engine access was less cavernous, the visual grandeur, that endless hood, was gone, and the truck's personality felt more hurried, less regal. It was a working tool first, a statement second. On the road, they stood out to train not for their imposing beauty, but for their odd, stunted proportion, a curious footnote to the model's legacy. Today, these short BBC W900 as are among the rarest of the breed. While the long-nosed versions have been celebrated and restored into icons, these shorter siblings often faded into obscurity, worked hard, and eventually scrapped. Finding one now is a special kind of treasure hunt, a discovery of pragmatic anomaly that proves even the most classic designs were sometimes forced to adapt, sacrificing legend for a few precious feet of legal compliance. 10. Stepping into a brand new 1974 W900a on a hot summer day often meant facing a stark reality. That massive, beautiful cab was an oven. Factory air conditioning was not a given. It was a premium line item on the order sheet, a luxury many fleet owners or cost-conscious buyers skipped. What you got instead was a basic heater in the humble, rotating vent wing, a technology borrowed from passenger cars of the 1930s. The message from the factory was clear. Climate control was your problem to solve. This omission gave rise to a whole cottage industry of aftermarket hang-on air conditioning units. These were often bulky, rattling assemblies clumsily bolted under the dash or even through the floor, their condenser units strapped precariously to the outside of the hood. They were notorious for robbing engine power, struggling to truly cool the vast interior, and being the first thing to break down. Many drivers simply learned to endure, mastering the art of the vent wing to funnel a blast of highway air directly onto their face, their shirts soaked with sweat, the smell of hot asphalt and diesel fuel pouring into the open windows. That absence of factory air speaks volumes about the era's definition of a working truck. Comfort was secondary to brute functionality and upfront cost. The driver's endurance was considered part of the job specification. Today, it's one of the most jarring reminders of how different life on the road was. A time when controlling your environment meant manual windows, a determined elbow, and a deep tolerance for the elements that came standard with every mile. 11. That small, enigmatic badge on the hood was a permanent whisper of the truck's intended life. To anyone outside the freight industry, LTL was a meaningless trio of letters, but to a dispatcher or driver, it told an entire story. Less than truckload meant this rig was built for the hustle of consolidation, destined not for a single massive load, but for a constant shuffle of smaller pallets and parcels. It was a workhorse of commerce, running between terminals, never dominating the scale, but always keeping the gears of regional distribution turning. The badge marked the truck as part of a specific, gritty ecosystem, unlike a dedicated heavy hauler that might spend days loading and then a straight shot across the country. An LTL truck lived a fragmented existence. Its days were measured in dock bumps, multiple stops, and intricate schedules. The driver was a master of the city street as much as a highway, navigating alleys and industrial parks to pick up this batch of machinery parts and that stack of textiles, building a full trailer piece by piece. Finding a surviving W900a with that badge still on the hood is like uncovering a faded business carved from a vanished world. It's a direct link to the complex, pre-digital logistics of the 1970s, when freight classification was literally emblazoned on the equipment. The badge outlived the specific job, the company, and often the era itself, leaving behind a cryptic clue to a life of constant, varied work, a subtle nod to the fact that this king of the road was also a devoted servant of the shore haul. 12. It's a subtle piece of design genius hidden in plain sight. Those side hood vents on a 1974 W900a, with their distinctive flush-mounted shape, weren't added for aesthetic balance alone. They are a direct application of a principle borrowed from the heavens, a Naka duct, named for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NASA's predecessor. In the skies, these submerged inlets allowed high-speed aircraft to scoop air into engine compartments without the parasitic drag of a protruding scoop. On the Kenworth, they performed the same elegant trick at a far slower pace, silently pulling a stream of cooling air into the cavernous engine bay to help manage the tremendous heat of a hard-working diesel, all while cheating the wind as little as possible. This borrowing from aerospace wasn't just about engineering plagiarism. It was a statement of intent. It revealed a design philosophy where every line, even on a traditionally styled long-haul truck, could serve a calculated purpose. While the truck's overall shape shouted classic American brute force, these vents whisper about efficiency and advanced thinking. They represent a fascinating moment where the pragmatic world of freight met the high-speed science of aerodynamics, adapted for a machine that would rarely break 70 miles per hour. So, those vents are more than just a signature look. They are a quiet badge of intelligent design, a piece of supersonic thinking translated into rolling sculpture. They remind us that the W900's beauty was often rooted in a deeply practical kind of cleverness, seamlessly fusing the timeless brawn of conventional with a space-age trick to keep it running cool and true on the endless road. 13. To see a W900a in a 6x6 configuration is to witness a fundamental reinvention of its purpose. Gone is a pure highway persona, replaced by an overwhelming, almost brutal muscularity. The addition of that third-driven axle, with its heavy-duty differentials and a second chain-drive transfer case, transformed the silhouette into something far more primal. The frame rode higher, the chassis bristled with extra driven shafts, and the whole machine seemed to squat with latent, earth-gripping power. This was no longer just a hauler. It was a conqueror of mud, sand, and impossible grades. These mechanical oddities were not born from whimsy, but from a specific language of need. They were commissioned for the weirdest, most demanding jobs on the planet. As a backbone for firefighting apparatus in wildland frontiers, as a prime mover for oil field drill rigs that had to traverse landscapes with no roads, or even as a discreet, formidable carrier for military equipment. Each one was a custom-built tool, where the classic long-nose cab became the command center for an all-terrain brute. Driving one was a different kind of symphony. The deep-throated roar of the diesel now paired with the whine and grind of multiple axles pulling in unison. They were cumbersome on pavement but unstoppable off it, a testament to Kenworth's willingness to adapt its iconic form to any task. Today, surviving examples are revered as rare monsters, the ultimate expression of the W900a's underlying strength, stretched and fortified into a configuration that feels less like a truck and more like a mobile industrial artifact. 14. That glider kit loophole was a quiet act of rebellion, a savvy and perfectly legal end run around the new wave of American regulations that were choking horsepower in the name of cleaner air. North of the border, a buyer could order a brand new, pristine 1974 W900a cab, chassis and hood, a rolling show without a heart or soul. This empty vessel was then delivered to a fitter's yard, where the real magic happened, driven by a simple equation. Why accept a strangled new engine when you could drop in a proven, roaring legend? The result was some of the most fascinating and brutally effective hybrids ever to hit the roads. Inside that glossy new cab, behind that flawless 1974 dash, you find a rebuilt, ungoverned heart and older machine, a howling Detroit 8V92, a pre-emissions Cummins, or a robust earlier Cat. It was a marriage of the best parts, a rust-free, state-of-the-art cab and chassis wrapped around a simple, muscular, and easily maintained powertrain that the EPA wished would just disappear. These trucks were born from a mindset that valued proven performance and owner autonomy over compliance, a last gasp of mechanical freedom. These Canadian gliders became legendary for their unique character. They were trucks that officially never existed in their final form, one-of-a-kind creations that carried their complex identity in every custom weld and adapted mount. They represented a final chapter where the owner, not a legislator, had the final say on what power meant, creating glorious mechanical mashups that were, in spirit, the last truly owner-specified trucks on the road. 15. To understand the place of the 1974 W900a in the landscape of American myth, you have to look to the movies. While the terrifying tanker from Duel was an older, modified Peterbilt, it established the long-nosed conventional as a symbol of enigmatic, rolling power. But the 1974 W900a didn't just inherit that aura. It directly birthed the next silver screen legend. Just a few years later, it would be transformed into Brutus, the relentless, gleaming antagonist in Sam Peckinpah's Convoy. That film captured the CB radio craze and immortalized the truck as a central character in the drama of the open road. Brutus wasn't a futuristic prototype or a modified antique. It was, at its heart, a mid-70s W900, a truck any driver might see at a way station or looming in their mirrors. This gave its menace a chilling credibility. Its polished menace, its spotlights, and that aggressive presence were all amplifications of the inherent authority already baked into the factory design. When it paced Burt Reynolds' Trans Am and Smokey and the Bandit the following year, the cultural die was cast, but it was Convoy that cemented the specific, squared-off visage of the W900a as the ultimate on-road adversary. So, a 1974 model sits at that perfect cinematic crossroads. It carries the primal, unexplained thread of Duel in its DNA, but wears the face of the more complex, iconic rival that would define the genre for a generation. It's the real-world ancestor to the legend, the honest workhorse that, with a coat of sinister paint and a row of lights, could transform into a symbol of awesome, relentless pursuit, a testament to how this truck's very shape was destined for the silver screen.